Princess Charlene's royal life was far from the fairy tale everyone believed. Behind the glamorous weddings and public smiles, there was a woman trying to escape the cage she was trapped in. After years of silence, Charlene is finally reclaiming her voice, and it's clear her story is about to take a shocking turn. Will she stay, or is she ready to break free? You won't want to miss what happens next in her journey. The perfect image, Princess Charlene's marriage to Prince Albert of Monaco, has always been painted as a fairy tale come to life. From the outside, it seemed like the perfect royal match, two worlds colliding in a glamorous setting. The charming prince, the graceful bride, the jaw-dropping wedding, and the media frenzy that followed made their love story one for the books. The world watched, captivated by the fantasy unfolding in Monaco. But behind the glittering palace walls, things weren't as they appeared. Charlene was expected to be the next Grace Kelly, a symbol of grace and elegance. It wasn't just about love. It was about fitting into a role that had been set out for her long before she met Albert. The comparison to Grace Kelly was not just a compliment, it was a burden. Grace had left behind a career and life to embrace her royal role, and now Charlene was expected to do the same. But there was a catch: Charlene's life wasn't her own. The weight of the legacy of Grace Kelly, was more than she could bear. From the moment their engagement was announced, Charlene became a part of an image. A part of an image that the palace worked tirelessly to maintain, hiding the cracks that were beginning to form. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about maintaining an image that the world was watching, expecting perfection. But Charlene wasn't sure this life was ever truly hers to begin with. Marriage struggles. Despite the glamorous wedding and the world's expectations, Charlene's marriage to Prince Albert was not the fairy tale it appeared to be. From the very start, there were signs that things weren't right. The smiles on their faces during public appearances seemed forced. The warmth between them felt artificial, and the silence that surrounded their relationship spoke volumes. Charlene wasn't just becoming a princess. She was stepping into a role that was far from her own. The pressure of being compared to Grace Kelly, of living up to expectations that were never truly hers, weighed heavily on her. The public believed they were witnessing a love story, but behind closed doors, Charlene was battling her own struggles. The most disturbing part: the rumors of escape. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, reports surfaced that Charlene had tried to leave Monaco, her future as the Princess of Monaco seemingly slipping away. The palace denied these reports, but the fact that a bride would try to flee so many times before her wedding speaks to a deeper, unspoken crisis. Despite the mounting pressure and the absence of any true affection, Charlene followed through with her royal duties, posing for photographs, attending events, and maintaining a public image. But it became clear that behind the smiles, she was fighting an inner turmoil that the world could not see. Escape attempts. Charlene's attempts to escape Monaco before her wedding were not just rumors. They were reports that kept surfacing time and time again. 3 separate occasions saw the princess allegedly trying to leave the country, once in Paris, once during the Monaco Grand Prix, and again, just days before her wedding. Each time she was stopped. Whether it was pressure from the palace, persuasion, or something more, the details were never fully revealed. This series of escape attempts suggested that Charlene was more than just a woman unsure about her marriage. She was deeply unhappy, trapped in a world she never truly chose. And yet, despite the shocking revelations, the wedding went on as planned. The 3-day wedding celebration in Monaco was a spectacle of royal splendor. It featured designer gowns, celebrity guests, and orchestras filling the air, all captured by the cameras. But while the world saw the royal wedding as a beautiful fairy tale, those closest to Charlene saw a woman whose tears at the altar spoke volumes. These weren't tears of joy, but rather tears of sorrow, isolation, and perhaps regret. The whole spectacle may have been a well-crafted event for the cameras, but the truth behind Charlene's forced smile was something far more painful. Emotional disconnect. After the wedding, it became increasingly clear that something was amiss in Charlene's life as a royal. while the world saw a princess posing for pictures, attending events, and fulfilling her royal duties. The emotional connection that should have been there was missing. Charlene's smiles were forced, and her body language was stiff, as if she were simply going through the motions of being a princess. Despite the arrival of their twins, Jacques and Gabriella in 2042, an event that would typically signify joy for a royal family, Charlene's emotional state remained detached. In photos with her children, she appeared to be fulfilling her duties as a mother, but there was no visible joy, no connection, no spark. The ease and comfort that one would expect from a new mother, especially in a royal family, were absent. Charlene's silence spoke louder than any public statement ever could. She didn't publicly lash out or cause a scene. Instead, she allowed the silence to grow. When she eventually spoke, it was a simple, quiet acknowledgement that she had found peace, not happiness or fulfillment. It was a statement that confirmed what many had suspected all along: the fairy tale had never been hers. It was a role she was forced into, and over time, it began to suffocate her. Behind the perfectly curated images of royal life, Charlene's story unfolded in quiet rebellion. She wasn't going to be the smiling princess everyone wanted her to be. She was simply surviving, enduring a life that felt more like a cage than a dream. The Brazilian scandal. In the weeks leading up to her wedding, a bombshell story broke that would shake the foundations of the royal fairy tale. A woman from Brazil came forward with a shocking claim: her daughter, born years earlier, was allegedly fathered by Prince Albert. The timing of the child's conception was particularly striking, as it overlapped with the early days of Charlene and Albert's relationship, leaving many to question whether Charlene had known about this child before she agreed to marry him. For Charlene, this revelation was more than just a scandal. It was a disruption to the carefully curated story of her life with Albert. If the claims were true, it meant that she was stepping into a marriage, not with a man who had put his past behind him, but with a man whose past was still actively affecting their relationship. The weight of this revelation was heavy, and it cast a dark shadow over what should have been a moment of happiness. Prince Albert had already acknowledged 2 other children born out of wedlock, but this new claim, with its timing so close to the wedding, felt like a betrayal. It wasn't just about a prince's past. It was about Charlene's future being tied to a man whose actions were now in the public eye, causing her immense emotional turmoil. Despite the palace's swift dismissal of the claim, with lawyers issuing public statements to shut it down, the damage had been done. The wedding was still on, but for Charlene, the fairy tale had already been cracked. The public smiles, the poses, and the carefully orchestrated moments couldn't hide the truth. Charlene was caught in a story that wasn't hers to tell. The silent rebellion. As the years passed, Charlene's presence in the public eye grew quieter and more distant. She wasn't openly rebelling against her royal duties, but her absences, her expressions, and her increasingly rare appearances spoke volumes. The fairy tale image of a happy, glamorous princess began to unravel, revealing a woman who was slowly breaking free from the script written for her. Charlene's silences were no longer just a sign of discomfort. They became a form of resistance. She was no longer trying to fit into the box that Monaco had created for her. She stopped attending events just because it was expected. She stopped showing up with a smile on her face when there was none behind it. Her actions, or lack thereof, signaled that she was drawing her own boundaries and refusing to play along with the role of the dutiful princess. Her disappearance from the public eye in 2021, when she left Monaco for South Africa under the guise of a medical issue, raised even more questions. What was really going on? Was she truly recovering from a medical condition, or was this her escape from a life she no longer wanted to live? The palace continued to offer explanations, but the public's skepticism only grew. By the time Charlene returned to Monaco, something had changed within her. She looked different, not just physically, but emotionally. Her once tired eyes now had a certain resolve. She was no longer the woman who had silently endured. She had learned how to protect herself, how to set boundaries. She wasn't just surviving her royal life, she was beginning to reclaim control of it. and in doing so, she was reshaping the narrative of her own existence within the palace walls, changing boundaries as time went on. Princess Charlene made it clear that she was no longer the woman who would silently endure the expectations and pressures of royal life. In 2022, a noticeable shift took place, one that could not be ignored. Charlene stopped adhering to the palace's demands to always be seen and to play the part of the ever-smiling princess. Instead, she started taking charge of her own story, and it was a powerful transformation. One of the most significant changes was her approach to fashion. Gone were the floaty gowns and soft pastel colors that echoed the style of Grace Kelly. Instead, Charlene began opting for sharp, tailored outfits that reflected a newfound strength. Her wardrobe became less about royal approval and more about personal expression. The once muted princess was now using fashion as a statement of independence and self-empowerment. It was no longer about pleasing the palace. It was about doing what made her feel strong. This new version of Charlene also meant fewer public appearances. She was no longer at every event just because it was expected of her. Instead, she began to say no. No to forced smiles, no to rigid schedules, and no to being dictated by others. She spent more time with her children, drawing a clear line between her royal duties and her personal life. It was clear, Charlene was putting her own needs and well-being first. Her silence had always been a form of rebellion, but now it had purpose. Charlene wasn't just protecting herself from the pressure. She was asserting her right to exist on her own terms. The boundaries she began to set were firm, and for the first time, it seemed as if she was no longer afraid to push back against the life that had been crafted for her. The future of Charlene. By 2022, the world was no longer viewing Princess Charlene as just the quiet, obedient wife of Prince Albert. She had evolved into someone who had reclaimed her own narrative, someone who was no longer willing to hide behind the expectations of the royal family. The spotlight remained on her, but she was no longer playing along with the script that had been written for her. The royal family had always been a picture of unity, but Charlene's changing presence was impossible to ignore. Her silences, her absences, and the subtle but powerful shifts in her public appearances sent a clear message. She wasn't going to be the woman people had expected her to be. She wasn't just a symbol of perfection. She was a woman who had learned to stand firm, to create her own identity within a world that had tried to define her. As her actions spoke louder than her words, the question on everyone's mind became, what's next for Charlene? With her new boundaries firmly in place and her resolve strengthened, many began to wonder if she was preparing for a larger change. Could she be planning her next move? Perhaps a complete departure from the royal life she was thrust into. One thing is certain, Charlene has shown that she is no longer just a princess playing a role. She is a woman with a voice, with choices, and with the power to shape her future. The palace may have tried to script her life, but Charlene is now writing her own story, and the world is watching closely to see where it leads. Charlene's journey from royal princess to a woman, finding her voice, is nothing short of extraordinary. What do you think she's planning next? Will she stay in Monaco or take control of her own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exclusive insights. And make sure you're back for our next video, where we reveal Guy Madison's secret relationships with old Hollywood stars. Trust us, you won't want to miss it.